You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God help us all. If you fail to prove us wrong, God help us.
Hello and welcome and thanks for tuning in. You're watching Gravitas. My name is Priyanka Sharma. Here's our show for tonight. Who is safe in Pakistan? This is my question for you tonight. Are the people of Pakistan safe? Look at these images now. These are scenes from today. Suicide bombings ripped through 2 mosques in Pakistan. Last we checked, at least 57 people were killed. Dozens more are injured. Another report from Pakistan made headlines today. A Lashkar operative was killed by 2 individuals when he was on a daily evening stroll. So guess what Pakistan's intelligence agency is doing about it? It is spooked. So it has put dozens of its own so-called assets in safe houses. Even the Pak ISI is worried about the state of security in the country because even a terrorist is not safe in Pakistan. This is our cover story tonight on Gravitas. Also on the show, we tell you all about China's new finance minister. Has Xi Jinping put another man in the line of fire to save the Chinese economy? We'll tell you all about China's many crises. It's not looking good for Xi Jinping. The UK Home Secretary wants to change the definition of a refugee. She says asylum seekers shouldn't shop for a destination. She wants to tighten global refugee rules. Has she forgotten that her own parents migrated to the UK? On Gravitas, we discuss Suella Braverman and her many callous remarks. And have you heard of TikTok's latest trend? It's called the girlfriend effect. We'll tell you all about Gen Z's latest obsession. Stay tuned to Gravitas. Our cover story tonight is from the killing fields of Karachi. Our cover story tonight comes from Pakistan, its biggest city and commercial capital, and also Pakistan's capital of crime and sectarial violence. A city that is infamous for being a breeding ground for terror outfits. What if I tell you tonight that even terrorists are no longer safe in this terror sanctuary? Let me explain what I'm talking about. A mystery killing of an LET operative. His name was Maulana Ziaur Rahman. He was a cleric in Karachi's prominent Gulistan-e-Johar neighborhood. But that was just a cover. His more important vocation was as a leader of Lashkar-e-Toiba, the terrorist organization behind the horrific attacks on Mumbai in 2008 and innumerable other acts of brutal terrorism. Ziaur Rahman was also involved in some extra religious gigs, like radicalizing Karachi's youth into picking up arms against India. On the 12th of September, he was shot dead, killed by 2 bike-borne assailants. Who was behind this killing? Initially, the Karachi police suspected an internal gang rivalry as a possible cause for the murder, but as days went by, this theory was junked due to a complete lack of evidence. It's been 17 days and this killing is starting to spook Pakistan's security apparatus. It has even sent the country's rogue spy agency, the ISI, into a frenzy. Because the ISI also can't seem to figure out who exactly orchestrated this killing. A homegrown terror group, perhaps? Or was this man targeted by those who he had targeted? Those, perhaps, outside Pakistan who sought justice and knew that this was the only way he would pay for a life of terrorism. Pakistan's ISI, which has sponsored terrorism as its main preoccupation, is breaking its head in an effort to find clues. Some within the ISI are linking this killing to India, even if they can't attribute it to India's intel agencies. So on what basis are they blaming India? On the basis of similar killings in recent days, the ISI suspects that there's a pattern behind these killings. You see, on the 10th of September, another Lashkar operative was killed in POK. His name was Muhammad Riaz, alias Abu Qasim Kashmiri. He was the main conspirator behind the Dhangri terror attack in India. He was shot dead inside a mosque in Rawalkot. This is just a few miles away from India's Poonch sector. The identities of the killers remain unknown to this day. And 5 days before this, on the 5th of September, one more Lashkar operative was gunned down. His name was Maulana Hafiz Kari Khurram Shehzad. He too was killed by unknown bike-borne assailants. The identities of those killers also remain unknown. Let's rewind a bit more. In May, another ISI operative was killed. His name was Paramjeet Singh Panjwar. He was the chief of the Khalistan Commando Force. He was wanted in India for terrorism. He was killed by an unidentified gunman when he was also out for a stroll, a morning walk, near his residence in Lahore. The identities of the killers also remain unknown. On the 26th of February this year, former commander of Pakistan-based terror outfit Al-Badr was killed. Strikingly, he was also shot outside his residence in Karachi's Gulistan-e-Johar area. The identities of those killers also remain unknown. And 6 days before this, on the 20th of February, Imtiaz Alam, alias Bashid Ahmed Peer, was also shot dead. He was one of India's most wanted terrorists. He was killed in a similar circumstance in Rawalpindi. The identities of those killers remain unknown. Do you see the pattern? On the 1st of March, a Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorist who hijacked an Indian Airlines flight was killed in Karachi. He was shot twice from point-blank range. The identities of the killers remain unknown. So let's round up now. You have the Khalistanis. You have Islamic extremists. They're all biting the dust in Pakistan, getting killed in their own playing field. What explains this? Are Pakistani terrorists now at war with themselves? Are these killings the result of some inter-gang rivalries? Well, whatever be the case, one thing is clear: these killings are not happening out of the blue. There certainly has been a trigger that has resulted in these cases. Now, what that trigger is, we leave it up to Pakistan to figure out. And where Karachi ends, Balochistan begins. It is Pakistan's largest province. It is also the most oppressed. Naturally, this province is perpetually in a state of unrest. There are frequent terror attacks. One such attack unfolded this afternoon. There was an explosion in the province's Mastung district. A powerful suicide blast ripped through a mosque here. A total of 52 people died and scores others were injured. The timing of the attack is striking. It unfolded during Eid-e-Miladun-Nabi. This is a day which marks the birth of Prophet Muhammad. Hundreds of devotees had gathered near the Medina Mosque in the district. Little did they know what awaited them. Visuals from the blast site show people being rushed to hospitals and ambulances. Many of them who made it to the hospital did not survive, and those who did have been left with life-threatening injuries.
In today's tragic incident, 32 people have died and over 100 were injured. We gave first aid to most of them and referred them to Quetta Trauma Center. Around 7 or 8 people with severe injuries have been admitted to us, and God willing they will be all right. Our doctors and all medicines were available here, so with God's help we have managed everything.
Given the scale of this tragic incident, Balochistan's caretaker chief minister has announced 3 days of mourning. He has also issued a statement condemning the attackers. Here's what it states. The enemy wants to destroy religious tolerance and peace in Balochistan. The explosion is unbearable. The perpetrators of the destruction do not serve any leniencies. Those who target peaceful processions will be dealt with firmly. Those who commit such heinous acts cannot be called Muslims. Just hours after this statement was made, there was yet another terror attack, this time in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Here too, the target was a mosque in the province's Hangu city. At least 5 people were killed in the blast and 10 others injured. Now here's the thing. Both the blasts unfolded on the Prophet's birthday, a day which is considered to be revered in Islam. So why would Pakistan's terror outfits who are fighting in the name of Islam disparage the sanctity of this day? And why would they want to target mosques of all the places? Now, these are questions the people and politicians of Pakistan have got to ask themselves. For decades, they've let terror outfits thrive and survive in the name of defending their faith. When will they realize that this fight has only brought doom upon their own country? Look at this report. More than 200 anti-Pakistan terrorists have been arrested in Afghanistan. No, these terrorists are not Afghan nationals, they're from Pakistan itself. They're trying to join hands with Afghan-based terror groups to perhaps wage a new war against Pakistan. These shifting dynamics, these targeted attacks and the killing of terrorists, all these developments indicate that something big is brewing within Pakistan, and it might just end up throwing the entire country into chaos. And while we are talking about Balochistan, do you remember the mysterious death of Karima Baloch in Canada? She was an activist who tried to be the voice of her native Baloch community. Well, Canada never took action against a political activist's death, and now the Baloch National Movement is carrying out protests in Geneva. Among the protesters is the activist's husband, Hamal Haider. He has now blamed the Pakistan ISI for Baloch's killing. The widower has also blamed Canada for not showing any interest whatsoever in the issue. What does the Prime Minister of Canada have to say about this? Will Pakistan reply to the accusation? Let's get into the details now.
On to the United Nations to take up actions against Pakistan and put some serious pressure on Pakistani government, especially the military establishment, to stop killing activists in Balochistan and outside of Balochistan.
That was Baloch's husband. He has accused Pakistan's intelligence agency and said that his late wife's killing was orchestrated in a bid to eliminate activists abroad. But why did he call out Pakistan? Why point out Pakistan's inter-services intelligence? Listen in.
There's no doubt that the Pakistani military establishment, especially the Pakistani ISI and intelligence, are behind Karima's killing. And we also suspect that Sajid Hussain was also killed, assassinated in a similar manner. So we think that the ISI, but we believe that the Pakistani military intelligence ISI behind killing of Karima and Sajid, and trying to kill other political activists.
You see, the shadow of doubt over Pakistan stems from the activist being a critic of the nation. Baloch was a vocal critic of the Pakistani army and the state's repression of a native community in Balochistan. After her mysterious death in Canada, her body, which was to be transported from Karachi to Balochistan, was forcibly taken by Pakistani authorities and taken to her hometown in Pakistan. Reports say that the activist was buried under the army watch. Those who come to pay respects were not allowed to come near the body. The surrounding areas near the burial site were put under strict lockdown. Why forcibly take her body to Pakistan? Why did the burial happen under such intense security? Why is Canada not asking these questions? Baloch's husband has now called out Prime Minister Trudeau. Haider says that the Canadian government has shown no interest in uncovering the truth.
I believe that the Canadian government and the Canadian justice system didn't do well for Karima Baloch. She died in a suspicious manner and suspicious circumstances, and we have been requesting the Canadian government to investigate her case, but we have seen no interest from the Canadian government. So it's our firm belief that the Canadian government is not concerned about our activists living in Canada, and they are not interested in Karima Baloch's case.
The Baloch Human Rights Council, or the BHRC, has questioned Trudeau and said, and I quote, "My question to Trudeau is that why is Canada not questioning Pakistan on committing atrocities and killing people? Is Canada not asking such questions because of the Baloch gold?" So what do they mean by Baloch gold? You see, the Baloch American Congress claims that Canada became a partner of the Pakistani Punjabi army to loot the gold of Balochistan. The BHRC has requested the UN to visit Balochistan and see the reality for themselves. It has highlighted the plight of Balochistan's people and the pain that the Pakistani army has caused. I'm once again quoting the BHRC. Find out what the Pakistan army is doing. Pakistan cannot sustain itself. Pakistan cannot feed itself. They are feeding Pakistan army with the gold of Balochistan. We want the army, the barbarian army, to be out of Balochistan. Is Canada taking a step against Pakistan? Has Prime Minister Trudeau addressed the current accusations? Not even a word. Trudeau's silence is raising tensions. Some officials are concerned about the government's consistency and fairness. They are now questioning Trudeau's heightened interest in the Hardeep Singh Nijjar case. The Baloch Human Rights Council of Canada released another statement. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's conspicuous silence regarding the unexplained death of Ms. Karima Baloch stands in stark contrast to his speeches and extensive media coverage concerning the death of Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Canada. The BHRC Canada said that the government knew about the threats that Baloch received from the ISI. Reports say that the government maintained complete silence on the matter. What game is Canada trying to play? Why keep silent on such a pressing issue? We will keep a watch as the story unfolds. We're not done with Pakistan yet. There was another big headline from the country today. A headline which concerns Zaka Ashraf. I'm sure that not many of you would have heard of him. This man is the chief of the Pakistan Cricket Board, and a curious case of foot-in-the-mouth syndrome. The team he governs has come to India to play in the 2023 ICC Men's ODI World Cup. For once, India has kept all of Pakistan's nefarious activities aside and has extended its warm hospitality to the Pakistan cricket players. They were given a grand welcome in Hyderabad and are being provided all amenities that befit a tournament such as this one. But despite all this, the PCB chief decides to provoke India. A viral video circulating on social media shows Zaka Ashraf calling India a quote-unquote Dushman Mulk, aka enemy country. You must listen to this to believe it.
कल पाकिस्तान की हिस्ट्री में इतने पैसे कभी नहीं मिले जितने मैंने इनको दिए, क्योंकि मेरा मकसद एक ही था कि हमारे जितने प्लेयर्स हैं ये मोराल इनका अप होना चाहिए। जब ये किसी दुश्मन मुल्क में या किसी जगह भी खेलने जाएं जहाँ कंपटीशन हो रहा है तो दे शुड गो विद full support of the nation.
You heard him. Let me repeat. He says, I want their morale to be high when they go to an enemy country. Now, Mr. Ashraf could have chosen many words: competitors, contenders, challengers, rivals. There's no dearth of words in the dictionary to describe a team or nation that you're about to play against. Yet, the PCB chief chose to describe India as an enemy country. How do we view this? Was this a Freudian slip or a deliberate statement? Whatever be the case, this only indicates that no matter what India does, no matter how many times it forgives Pakistan for its misdeeds, the country's mentality and agenda of a few of its citizens will never change. On one hand, the Pakistan cricket team received an enthusiastic welcome in India. On the other hand, the PCB chief makes such hateful comments. This reminds me of an old saying, the wolf may lose his teeth, but never its nature. What's inherent, what's inbuilt, what's drilled into your mind at a young age stays with you almost forever. It becomes a part of you, it consumes you. The PCB chief is a living example. Thankfully, there are some sane voices in the Pakistani civil society that are calling Zaka Ashraf out. They're calling him a political puppet and requesting India to not take his remarks seriously. Others are calling him irresponsible and asserting that India might be the enemy of Pakistani politicians, but it's certainly not the enemy of the people. And yet others are saying that it's not India that is Pakistan's enemy, but people like Zaka Ashraf themselves. It couldn't be put more aptly. It seems Pakistan's cricket elite are still nursing their anti-India hangovers. By doing so, they're only killing the future prospects of their players. Let's move on now. Chinese President Xi Jinping is on a purge of officials. He is reshuffling leaders like anything. A new man has now been put in the line of fire. Meet Lan Fan. He is now CCP's chief at the Ministry of Finance. He will replace Liu Kun in that role. So who is Lan Fan? A finance specialist, a veteran official. He was previously the party chief of China's Shanxi province. Now he could become China's next finance minister. Lan has taken over the position from Liu Kun. He is not a member of the CCP's Politburo, but his appointment comes at a crucial time. China, the world's second largest economy, is battling to rein in local government debt. Over the past decade, China's government finances have become more reliant on borrowing, all thanks to regular tax cuts and a weakening property market. According to the International Monetary Fund, China's total local government debt has swollen to a record $9 trillion this year. It has more than doubled since 2017. China's real estate market is also in crisis, courtesy Chinese property giant Evergrande. The heavily indebted real estate company defaulted back in 2021. And now its chairman, Hui Ka-yan, has been put under police surveillance. He's suspected to be conducting crimes. Evergrande, remember, was once the world's most valuable property developer. And now it stands $300 billion deep in debt. The firm has been scrambling to raise cash. It has been selling assets and shares so that it can repay its suppliers and creditors. Most of Evergrande's debt is owed to people within China, to ordinary citizens whose homes have not been finished till date. Along with Evergrande, several other major Chinese developers have defaulted over the past year. As many as 34 out of 50 developers with the most outstanding dollar bonds are falling behind on payments. Many are struggling to find the money to complete developments. It will not be an exaggeration for me to say that China's property sector remains on a knife edge. You see, China's economy is in trouble. This is not news. Now it's on Fon's shoulders to steer the country away from troubled waters. But can he do that? China is not only in an economic mess, but also in a political one. In the last few months, so many ministers have come and left, or worse, disappeared. Factions have formed within the CCP, and it seems that Xi Jinping is eliminating his enemies one by one. On top of this, China has its domestic issues to deal with. It faces a demographic dilemma with a rising number of elderly citizens and fewer newborns. So what does it do? It puts pressure on its population to procreate. Believe it or not, Xi Jinping has ordered his soldiers and their spouses to lead the charge in childbearing. On September 7th, China's communist leaders announced a new executive order on family planning and the military. The order went into effect on September 10th. Clearly, China is desperate. The new measures promise an annual 5-day vacation for new parents. Also, newly enlisted military personnel may be allowed to visit their families during the first 2 years of their service. Ever since China ended its strict one-child policy, both central and local governments have shifted gears. They have been rolling out incentives for couples to have more children. But will pressurizing its military force work? It's China, who can say? Troubles are mounting on the dragon. It's facing a triple whammy of economic, political and domestic crises. The question is, Will it be able to pull through? Talking about China, it's time now for our segment, Missing in China. This is a counter that keeps track of the high-profile disappearances that are currently ongoing in China. Li Shangfu, China's defense minister, has been missing for 31 days. Qin Gang, China's former foreign minister, has been missing for 96 days. Wei Fenghe, China's former defense minister, has not been seen in public for at least 137 days. Li Yushao, the former chief of the PLA rocket force, has not been seen in public for 77 days. Liu Guangbin, former deputy chief of the PLA rocket force too, has been missing for 77 days. Once again, we ask the Chinese authorities to address these missing cases. The families of these officials deserve an answer, as does the world. We will remind China again and again until it is forced to sit up and listen. Our next story comes from the United Kingdom. It involves this woman, Suella Braverman. She is the UK's Home Secretary. If you're unfamiliar with her, let me now show you her latest rant against refugees.
There are vast swathes of the world where it is extremely difficult to be gay or to be a woman. Where individuals are being persecuted, it is right that we offer sanctuary. But we will not be able to sustain an asylum system if, in effect, simply being gay or a woman or fearful of discrimination in your country of origin is sufficient to qualify for protection.
That's Britain's Home Secretary trying to tell us what a refugee is. She's unable to fix the UK's migration headache, so instead she wants to change the very definition of a refugee. She wants governments to rewrite the global refugee rules so that they are fit for a modern age. Let me now explain what she actually wants. If you belong to the LGBTQI community and feel persecuted in your own country, don't bother applying for asylum to the UK, because the Home Secretary doesn't think you're a refugee. If you're a woman being discriminated against in your country for whatever reason, don't bother seeking asylum in the UK, because Braverman doesn't think you qualify as a refugee. It gets worse. Braverman's latest rant against refugees came in Washington. She was addressing a think tank. She wants changes in the United Nations 1951 Refugee Convention to suit the UK's own selfish interests. Her goal is simple: to reduce the number of people entitled to protection. You see, the Conservative government in the UK wants international support for its hardline stance on unauthorised migration. Listen to what she says next.
Seeking asylum and seeking better economic prospects are not the same thing. Seeking refuge in the first safe country you reach, or shopping around for your preferred destination, are not the same thing. Being trafficked, i.e. transported against your will, perhaps to be sold into sex slavery, and being smuggled, i.e. asking someone to sneak you into a country, are not the same thing.
Listen to that. Is this what you expect from the Home Secretary of a country which claims to be liberal? Look at the language she uses to talk about refugees. There is no compassion, no sympathy. Does Braverman really think that migrants are shopping for destinations? That those fleeing war, those fleeing persecution, those fleeing natural calamity are coming to the UK for some fish and chips? What's ironic is that she says those seeking refuge in her homeland are doing so for better economic prospects. Need I remind her about the economic mess that the UK is currently in? Her comments have been condemned. Refugee and human rights groups have criticised her for her polarising words. In fact, even the UK's own immigration lawyers say that her argument holds no merit. Her claim that rising numbers of asylum seekers find refuge in the West because of lax asylum rules does not apply in the UK. Immigration lawyers have reminded her that asylum seekers are required to prove that they indeed fear persecution. Only then can they cross the borders. Does Braverman really think that members of the LGBTQI community who are tortured in many countries are coming to the UK for a shopping excursion? Her statement is devoid of feeling. Some may call it a gaffe, but others are asking, What else do you expect from her? Just look at her past comments to see her obsession with the UK's borders. Braverman is the Home Secretary of the United Kingdom. She is a figurehead of the right wing of the governing Conservatives in the UK. She has been branded as a hardline immigration chief of the United Kingdom. Remember, this is a Cambridge-educated lawyer we're talking about. Under her, Britain has adopted a punitive approach to people who arrive by unauthorized means. Part of Braverman's obsession is with small boats moving across the English Channel. Look, there is a crisis at hand, there's no denying that. More than 45,000 people arrived in the UK by boat from northern France last year. This is up from 28,000 in 2021 and 8,500 in 2020. Braverman's argument has always been the same, that migrants are straining Britain's public finances. She also says these arrivals are posing threats to public safety. She says boat arrivals bring with them more crime to the so-called safe shores of Britain. Remember, the UK has passed a law calling for small boat migrants to be detained and then deported permanently to their home nation or third countries like Rwanda. And Rwanda has agreed. Do we know what kind of plight awaits migrants if they are sent back to the country, the very country that they were trying to escape from? No. With leaders like Braverman, can the United Kingdom call itself a liberal democracy anymore? Let's not forget about Braverman's own origins. She was born to a Hindu Tamil mother and a Goan father. Her parents migrated to the UK in the 1960s. She's lucky the UK was more forgiving and sympathetic to migrants back then. It is because of the liberal migration policies of the UK back then that Braverman flourished and received the best education that the UK could offer, only to make these incendiary remarks today. Imagine if someone wanted to define a refugee back then or say no to migrants seeking a better life in the UK. The UK wants to stop these channel crossings. We understand that. Braverman wants to toughen refugee laws, but her recent attempt to change the definition of a refugee, her insensitive speech, has only won her international critique. This is what a failed politician looks like. The issue of migration is a complex one. I'm not denying that. But to be insensitive to the plight of migrants, to use such callous language is not okay. Remember, no one puts their child on a boat unless the water is safer than the land. Shifting our focus now to the United States of America, the US Congress is in deep trouble. The government is on the verge of another partial shutdown. This would be the fourth such partial shutdown in a decade. The situation could result in thousands of federal workers getting fired, and many will be working without pay. While President Biden has said that a shutdown is not inevitable, reports say that a bipartisan package could help manage and keep the government running. But the question is, what does a government shutdown mean? What does it mean for Americans? Take a look at this next report.
The U.S. government is on the verge of a partial shutdown. This will have some heavy implications on its citizens. So, why is it happening? It all stems from the tussle between Republicans and Democrats. Republicans are demanding deep cuts in public spending, and now the ball is in their court. How? You see, the funding for federal agencies will run out at midnight on September 30th. The U.S. Congress will need to pass 12 appropriations bills to finance government operations in time. This money needs to come in before the start of the new fiscal year from October 1st, but Republicans have already rejected spending levels for the fiscal year of 2024. The agreement included $1.59 trillion in discretionary spending. Republicans want more cuts in federal spending. They are demanding another $120 billion in cuts. And a tougher legislation that would stop the flow of immigrants at the U.S.-Mexico border. The U.S. Congress now needs to pass a new legislation that Republicans will need to approve, and President Biden would sign into law as soon as possible. So far, the House of Representatives has passed 3 of 4 bills to fund parts of the government. But the partisan bills alone can't prevent the shutdown. A continuing resolution could have been a solution to delaying the shutdown. What is a continuing resolution? A CR would extend federal spending until November and authorize nearly $6 billion for domestic disaster response and aid to Ukraine for the war. But the measure has already been rejected by Republicans in the House. So, as the fight between the two chambers goes on, it is increasing the odds of money running out. If the bank goes empty and the government shutdown happens, thousands of federal workers will have to be fired. And a range of services, from economic data releases to nutrition benefits, will be halted. Several sectors and industries will be affected, including the military, law enforcement, federal courts, healthcare, transportation, foreign affairs, and education. Reports say that the White House is training senior staff to send out press releases or update the website. Those are the jobs of junior aides. But the reason is obvious. The government is preparing itself to fire thousands of personnel. Should other government officials start packing their bags? Former President Trump and congressional Democrats entered a standoff. Both fought over Trump's demand for funding for a border wall. The disruption lasted a total of 35 days. Will the U.S. be able to dodge the potential shutdown? Will Americans get to keep their jobs? Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
What's in your medicine cabinet? How many daily meds and supplements are you using? Do you know what you're putting into your bodies? It has been 2 years since COVID vaccines were first introduced, yet we continue to gain new insights into their impact on our bodies, especially on women's reproductive health. Now, over the past 2 years, there's no denying that these vaccines have prevented millions of hospitalizations and deaths. So before I proceed, let me be clear. Vaccines are the best protection against several life-threatening diseases, but do we know enough about them? New studies have also highlighted the hidden risks of COVID vaccines, specifically for women's health, ranging from irregular menstrual cycles to miscarriages and even reduced milk supply in breastfeeding mothers. It begs the question, what potentially harmful elements are we injecting into our bodies? Are we unknowingly endangering our health in the pursuit of immunity? We know that COVID-19 vaccines have different effects on women when compared to men. So we must consider whether the pharma industry is giving sufficient and equal thought to the impact of their products on women's health. The question is there adequate research to address the gender gap in medical studies? In the latest development, a new study has discovered the presence of mRNA from COVID vaccines. What is mRNA? It stands for messenger ribonucleic acid, and it is a single-stranded molecule that carries the instructions to make proteins. It has a fundamental and essential role that makes our bodies function. So an mRNA vaccine tricks the body into producing some of the viral proteins itself. They work by using this mRNA, which is a molecule that essentially puts DNA instructions into action. That's how the vaccine works. Now, a new study has found that in the breast milk of breastfeeding mothers for up to 45 hours after receiving this vaccine, mRNA is still present. The study has been published in the journal Lancet. 70% of the breast milk samples analyzed in the study were found to contain mRNA from the vaccines. Although the detected amount was largely fragmented, it retained 12% to 25% of its original integrity. The researchers suggest that more studies needed to determine the minimum amount of mRNA that could potentially trigger an immune response in newborn babies. The samples were collected from 13 healthy postpartum women, both before and after vaccination. In total, there were 20 vaccine exposures and 154 breast milk samples considered. Now, full disclosure, the 13 lactating women had received either the Moderna or Pfizer vaccine. What the study found was trace amounts of mRNA were present in 10 to 20 exposures up to 45 hours after vaccination. The study noted that the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein was not expressed. All participating women tested negative for COVID before the collection of milk samples. The samples collected before vaccination tested negative. Now, this finding is significant in its scope. extending beyond mRNA COVID vaccines. The study offers valuable insights into the transport and presence of vaccine mRNA in breast milk, which can be relevant for assessing the safety and efficacy of future therapies which are given to pregnant women and lactating women in particular. It is important to note that in 2021, studies showed that no traces of mRNA vaccines ended up in mothers' breast milk. At the time, it was suggested that such vaccines are safe during lactation, and lactating women were encouraged to take them without stopping breastfeeding. However, when the vaccines became available, changes in women's menstrual cycles were reported. While most women showed no evidence of menstrual alteration, some indicated either an increase or a delayed cycle. A Saudi Arabian study evaluated the impact of COVID-19 vaccines on all aspects of the menstrual cycle, including cycle length, amount of bleeding and pain. The study included a total of 673 women. 46% of them reported changes in their cycle after both COVID-19 vaccine doses. This study was conducted from May to September last year, and the report concluded by promoting the COVID-19 vaccine, stating that there is no statistically significant association between the vaccine and the many issues that the women in the study faced. However, this raises important questions. Were there temporary issues factored into research? Did we know beforehand what effects these vaccines might have on women's health? Because when you experience late periods, abnormal bleeding or increased pain, it can cause panic and anxiety. If these effects had been discussed earlier, women might have been better prepared to handle them. Almost all research on COVID-19 and clinical trials of vaccines do not include sufficient data on women. How can we combat the pandemic if half of the human population is left out of COVID-19 research? The lifelong consequences of this neglect could be severe for women globally, particularly as new variants and other viruses emerge and potentially exacerbate the differences even more. Take this study, for example. It was published last year and proves the exclusion of women from studies. It demonstrates how this exclusion harms women's health in the long run and slows our response to the pandemic. It highlights that studies still neglect to include enough women in clinical trials despite big differences. Pandemic research and medical research in general could be transformed by focusing more on gender-specific effects of disease and treatment. It is crucial to include women in research to assess the short and long-term benefits and effects. Remember, in a pandemic, only when we save one section of the society, women in this case, can we save everyone. Shifting our focus to Switzerland, Swiss glaciers are melting at an alarming rate this year. The monitoring body said that the overall volume has shrunk by 10% in the last 2 years. That's alarming. A combination of warm early summer and recent heat waves have accelerated the melting process beyond expectations. Take a look.
Switzerland's glaciers are melting at record rate, shrinking their overall volume by 10% in the last 2 years. This is according to a Swiss monitoring body. The glaciers are seeing their second worst melt rate this year after record losses in 2022.
This year, 23, was again characterized by very strong melting. We have lost 4% of the remaining Swiss ice volume in just this single year. And combined with the record year of 22, we have now lost 10% of the Swiss volume in just 2 years.
Switzerland is home to more than half of the glaciers in the Alps. And temperatures there are rising fast, around twice the global average due to climate change. The country witnessed its third hottest summer on record in the last 2 years. The ice loss witnessed in these 2 years was as much as the recorded loss in the 3 decades before 1990. Matthias Haas leads monitoring body Glacier Monitoring Switzerland, GLAMOS.
This year was very problematic for glaciers because there was really little snow in winter, almost record low snow depth, and the summer was very warm. The combination of these two factors is the worst that can happen to glaciers. And then, of course, there is climate change that makes such extreme events, as we have seen them in the last 2 years, much more likely.
August 2023 was the peak melt month. The melting of glaciers in the Alps is a significant issue caused by climate change. In some areas, for the first time, record number of new lakes are forming next to glacier tongues.
So we are really losing the small glaciers. The remnant ice is becoming covered by rocks and debris. Regions that have been snow and ice covered over the last decades and centuries are becoming just black slopes that are dangerous because of rockfall. So many different things change in the Alps, and this is impressive to witness.
The conditions this year have been a bit better. The melting has not exceeded last year's record-breaking ice loss. But with climate change and the speed at which these glaciers are melting, scientists say 2023 already marks a year of significant ice loss. In Switzerland, temperatures in August reached an average of 15.5 degrees Celsius. In the mountains of Montana, a government agency recorded a new all-time high of 31.5 degrees Celsius on August 24th. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
You may have heard about trophy wives. Women's revenge bodies, the glow-ups following a bad breakup or divorce have been discussed endlessly. But it's 2023, times have changed. Gen Z is now leading the charge of trends. It is the era of trophy husbands and boyfriends. At least according to TikTok, there's a new trend on the market. It's called the girlfriend effect. Stay with me and let's discuss. So girlfriends are showing off their boyfriends. They are sharing their partner's pictures before and after the relationship. The claim is their love and relationship gave their boyfriends a glow up. From the looks of it, there is a transformation. Girlfriends claim they encourage their boyfriends to look and feel their best, and the trend has been a big hit. It has got more than 58 million views on the platform. The clips show the dramatic difference in the guys' appearances. They appear to be better looking, better groomed, and well dressed. Many TikTokers shared that girlfriends have helped their partners put together these outfits, given them styling advice, and helped them groom to look their best. Well, we are not sure if girlfriend effect is real. From anecdotal evidence, people often end up gaining weight when they are in a healthy and happy relationship. But it's definitely refreshing to see that for once, it's the men who are putting in effort to look good for their partners. This trend is the exact opposite of the boyfriend effect. While the girlfriend effect is thought to bring out the best in a man, the boyfriend effect, sadly, is believed to accentuate a woman's flaws. As in, the more time girlfriends spend with their boyfriends, the more they feel to obsess over their physical appearance, the more insecure they become. How tragic. But are you surprised? You can always rely on social media to come up with fascinating, at times bizarre trends. People engage for a few days until the next big thing emerges. Before the girlfriend effect, there was a Roman Empire trend. Believe it or not, girls asked the men in their lives how often they thought about the Roman Empire. It was more frequent than they anticipated. The frequency often left the girls surprised. So what would be the next TikTok trend? Who can say, but you can count on it for a good laugh. And on that note, it's a wrap on Gravitas tonight. Leaving you as always with Gravitas images. I'll see you next week. Enjoy your weekend.
It's working. Come on. Come on, go. The other way. The other way.
To college. It's easy to tell you a flat story. It's easy to show you what's happening around the world. We do the difficult part.
This weapon has been banned, but the US, Ukraine and Russia do not find the bombs problematic.
We also tell you why what's happening.
New drug is making a difference in the fight against Alzheimer's. This medicine helps slow down a patient's cognitive decline.
We look beyond the text. We give you context.
Is China preparing for a war in the Himalayas? And tonight, we come to you with some proof.
Hypocrisy is stunning.
Do leaders mean what they say? Do they